Hi, this week on the Heroes, Villains, and Sidekicks Show, we'll be looking at the origin and backstory of Marvel's cleanup crew for superhero disasters. That's right, we're going to be talking about damage control. And that's what we'll be doing here on the Heroes, Villains, and Sidekicks Show. We'll be talking and learning about the origins and backstories of heroes, villains, and sidekicks throughout the comic book universe and pop culture. Now, we're going to look at your popular characters, but we're also going to look at some obscure characters you may have never heard of, but I think you'll dig. Before we start looking into damage control, I wanted to mention that I put something new on the site, a new little bit of technology that will allow you to leave me a voicemail. Really, it's just recording an MP3 file that goes on a server somewhere, but they call it a voicemail. So it'll let you leave me a voicemail. And it's right over on the side of the site. There's a little tab there with a microphone on it, and it says, what character do you want to hear about? I might also be putting another little widget someplace on the site, but for right now, it's on the right hand of the site. You can click on it and just leave a message. You get up to, I want to say 3 minutes, and just go there and tell me about who you'd like to hear about on the show. And remember, it can be a character that's comic related or anyone from pop culture. So you can head over to the site, heroesvillainsandsidekicks.com, and just click on that little microphone, that little tab, leave a message. Tell me why you want to hear about this character. Of course, tell me the character's name, maybe why you want to hear about them, and if you want, leave your name. Also, I can put this message on the show. I'd love to be able to do that to sort of start the show out. So if you are okay with having your voicemail played on the show, just leave that at the end of the voicemail. Say, yes, it's okay for me to air this. And I will put it on the show. And then, of course, I will use your recommendations for future shows. And also just a quick reminder to head over to iTunes and leave a review. That way I can get a better idea, how you like the show, and it'll help us move up the ranks in iTunes so that more people can learn about the podcast. And now on to damage control. So let's say that Bruce Banner is having a coffee at a nice diner in Manhattan, and the waitress accidentally didn't give him his decaf. Then to make matters worse, she served him apple pie and not peach pie. Well, you know what happens at that point. His eyes go all green and he hulks out. He destroys the restaurant and just about the entire block, then jumps away, muttering something about feeling jittery. Well, that's usually where we leave things, right? We follow the Hulk and he turns back in the Banner and laments about what he's just done. But in the pages of damage control, we learn about what happens back at the scene of all that destruction. The damage control crew are hired to clean up things around the city that have been destroyed by superheroes and rebuild them. Think of it, all those superhuman battles in New York City, all the damage, a company like that could make a killing. The comic, the title, have had sort of fits and starts. It's never really found its footing, and I really think, though, if someone like Bendis would run with this, I think he would be perfect for this title to do something with a property like damage control. And it really reminds me of the book itself, if you think of the idea of it. Not superpowers, not supers, but just people. It really reminds me of how Bendis treats heroes and civilians in his amazing comic Powers. If you haven't read Powers, take a look at that. I should do an episode on that main character there, Christian Walker. So in Powers, it's heroes aren't always good guys, or they just make stupid mistakes like getting powers and trying to fly for the first time, not even practicing, only to smash through several buildings and then hit a person walking their dog, completely obliterating her. And this is really an actual little storyline that happened. So again, read Powers if you haven't. So I can see where Bendis could really shine in a title like this, where you have, because he writes everyday people so well. He writes the non-superhero, the alter ego of the characters almost better than he writes the heroes. Actually, I think what he does best is, if you haven't guessed, I really love Brian Bendis. What he does is he realizes that the hero isn't any different from the alter ego, so the voice of the hero is, I think, a lot more true. So I don't know, maybe it's just me. I think he could do a great job with a non-superpowered team that has to interact with supers, which is a lot of what happens in, if you think Jessica Jones, this comic Jessica Jones. Yes, she has powers, but she interacts with usually, mortals, humans who don't have powers. So that's my little soapbox. I'd love to see Bendis take on Damage Control. So let's get into the background of Damage Control. Damage Control was co-created by writer Dwayne McDuffie and artist Ernie Cullen, and first appeared in the 1988 Marvel Annual number 4 in a 5-page story titled The Sales Pitch. Now, we didn't learn that much about the team in these 5 pages. The actual entire 5 pages is really just a representative from Damage Control telling the Hulk what Damage Control was all about and asking him if he would be their spokesperson, their salesperson, in not a very good way. So the representative gives him a brochure, which is hilarious. I've actually put an image up of it on the site over on the episodes page, the post for this podcast. Now, no surprises. The Hulk does not care for the pitch and clobbers him with a roulette wheel. Now, if you're wondering why a roulette wheel, this was way back when the Hulk was gray and he was smart, had intelligence, and he ran a casino. So it was actually weird just to read that little 5-pager. Some of these 80s books are just so strange. I mean, Silver and Bronze Age books are silly and weird sometimes, but I don't know, 80s stuff sometimes just feels wrong. I don't know what. Maybe it's all the characters with the mullets. I mean, they just seem off. I don't know why. Maybe because I was reading comic books heavily back then, so it's really strange. I'm reading very heavily now, but it's really strange to revisit titles from the 80s that are kind of like our era. Not the sensibilities of the 60s and early 70s, but at the same time just seem like they're so far flung past the mark. So that was our first glimpse at the Damage Control. We don't get a lot, and then the team shows up again back in Marvel Comics Presents, which is an anthology, number 19 in 1989. This time the story's a little bit larger. It's a 17-page story. And here we get a little bit more insight of what the group can do. The story starts with John Porter, will be a member of Damage Control, talking to the female bar owner in this bar they're sitting at, when suddenly Daredevil and the bad guy he's fighting busts through the window, smashing the window. John then kicks his sale pitch into high gear, telling her that he sells pretty much superhero insurance. She asks if he's from Damage Control, and he says no, he's on his own and he's not affiliated with them. Now, as he tries to sell her on the big idea of this superhero insurance that he's working on, her bar is being destroyed bit by bit until finally a grenade blows the place up, leaving her in tears outside of it with John Porter and the other patrons. Now, just then, Damage Control swoops in and says they're here to fix it. She was under contract with them and they're here to do their job. And in just a few quick panels, they clear the debris and put a new building up. Now, John is just standing there amazed. He wasn't aware they could do work like that. He realizes he could never do something like that in the small size of this company he's trying to start. And it's just then that Anne-Marie Hogue, she's a stylish older woman, and she is the director of Damage Control, offers him a job because she can see that and has heard about him and has a good feeling about him. So she offers him this job and he takes it. Now, before we get a little bit more into Damage Control, the team, and their little adventures, let's go through some of the core members of the Damage Control team. We have Anne-Marie Hogue. She is the founder and the first director of Damage Control. She's a shrewd older woman with some fairly high-up contacts in the Marvel Universe. Then we have Robin Chapel, and she's sort of the traffic manager, and she's sort of I would say second in charge type person, and is one of Miss Hogue's most trusted employees, and she actually ends up taking over Damage Control for a time. Then we have Albert Cleary. He's the comptroller, and he's sort of like the financial genius that helps keep the company in the black. Then we have John Porter. We just talked about him a little earlier. He is made an account executive, and John really has the uncanny ability to find a peaceful, if not a very unique, or if not very unique, solutions for complicated problems. Now, he and Robin were sort of at odds at first because Robin wanted the job he ended up getting, but they, soon become friends. Then we have Bart Rosman. Rosum? I think that's how you say it, Rosum. And he was an intern, but then he gets a full-time job there. And he's a very Shaggy-like character, like right out of Scooby-Doo. He's kind of a slacker kid, very cliche. A lot of the characters in here, I think like a lot of characters in the 80s, tended to be almost like cliches of what they were supposed to be. Then we have Eugene Strasser, and he's the techie of Damage Control, kind of a bit of a Stark. He's able to, not Winter is Coming Stark, but Tony Stark. So he's able to understand a lot of the tech that they sort of find on site and help rebuild things and use technology to better the company. And he actually becomes a supervillain at some point. Not a very good one, but he becomes a supervillain at one point when he's fired from Damage Control. But he reforms and is hired back at the team. And we're going to learn a little bit about each of these sort of events that we've talked about when we have just been going over the members of the team as we go through our backstory of Damage Control. So we get that 17-pager, and then Damage Control Inc. returns in 3 separate miniseries, each limited to each limited to 4 issues. They never really have their own series that last. They're all set up as minis. And I think that is because the concept just works a lot better in short, contained stories. Now, I reread all the issues from each of the series and the 5-pager and the 17-pager before I recorded the show. And I just found them to be a little formulaic. A bad guy destroys something, then Damage Control fixes it. I mean, there's some corporate intrigue about how the company's run and some soap opera interbusiness relationships. But it was hard getting into the stories. That being said, I still love the concept of the book. And I think it could be done really well, in this new modern era of storytelling and comic storytelling. And like I said, I think Bendis would just kill writing a new version of Damage Control. But all that being said, there were some really neat moments through the mini. For example, the one that I loved, there is a page where the construction crew from Damage Control is clearing out a rubble from a building that was demolished by some superhero fight. And another worker picks up this glowing object, like a glowing orb. Now the foreman tells him to put it down, but before the worker can put it down, he transforms into this sort of muscular green man and, starts spouting how he was not meant to be here. He has a destiny. He is, made for better things and, a noble cause and a noble quest, and he flies away. So as just matter-of-factly, the foreman picks up the phone and calls Damage Control and tells them to send over another worker that one of his just had an origin and won't be back. So, it's just how sort of cavalierly they talk about, oh, we just had another origin this week. It'd be like you can see a sign that says, don't touch. Is it glowing? Don't touch it. We are, 273 days without an origin. I mean, that kind of stuff would be just hilarious in a book. Now, one odd thing about Damage Control, the company, the fictional company, is that it is actually owned by Tony Stark and William Fisk. That's right, the Kingpin. Not a pair you would think that would go into business with each other. Well, their business partnership doesn't last very long. And in one of the series, Miss Hogue, the founder, is offered a government job and puts Robin Chapel in charge. Now, she is more than capable of handling the job, but Fisk and Stark do not feel that she is, and they think they're going to lose money, and really Stark is not really comfortable being partners with the Kingpin of crime, so they say they are just going to sell their ownership of the company. And they do. They sell Damage Control to Charlton Co., which is like an obvious nod to Charlton Comics, which was kind of neat. But Charlton Co. Was doing some shady things. Like, it didn't have enough money to buy the company, so they actually borrowed some money from the Kingpin. Well, that gave Fisk a stake in the company, and he was able to use that to bleed them dry with, like crazy criminal type insurance payments, where, you're paying like 800% interest on your money. So Charlton Co. has to cut costs. They have to fire people just to have, pay the VIG on this money that they took out from, the Kingpin, this loan shark. And they almost bankrupt the company. Now, fearing the company would go under, Hogue came back and she got one of her high-up friends, Nick Fury, involved. And the pages on these are hilarious. He's got this long hair. It's almost like a mullet. He's very well dressed. They are hilarious. Again, there's a ton of pictures over on the site on the episodes page for this post. Just because they were all so funny, I just kept putting photos up. There's probably more photos or pages than in any other post I think I've done. So Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. discover that Charlton really was up to no good and that they had to be paying Fisk. So Fisk had his hand in the company's cookie jar. So Hogue and Fury pretty much make Charlton sell Hogue the company back. So now she is in control again. But not only did Fisk get these huge interest payments, he made, as he said, $700 million off the company because since he had a stake in it, he used them, or the company ended up cleaning up a lot of things that happened in that early 90s event, Acts of Vengeance, that Fisk himself started. So Fisk starts this Acts of Vengeance, all the carnage and the damage that occurred because of it. A company that he owned a stake in was cleaning it up, so he made all the money off of that. So he made, as he said, $700 million off of it. Now out from under Charlton Co. and Fisk, Damage Control rebuilds itself, hires all its employees back, or the ones that we're familiar with, and goes out there to get more work. Now, they pop up from time to time in the Marvel Universe. They had a 3-issue mini during the Planet Hulk event, and even bid on rebuilding the Avengers Mansion when Luke Cage was in charge. Now, one of their last appearances in the Marvel Universe was in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 673, where they were hired to fix up Manhattan after the events of Spider Island. They don't look quite the same as they did in other iterations, but maybe this was a bid to maybe try to relaunch the comic. Obviously, it never happened. Now, there may be some newer appearances, but I was not able to find them while researching the team. If you know of any, though, again, head over to the site, head over to the post for this podcast, and just leave a comment, and I can take a look at that. Now, why I thought it would be interesting to do an episode on Damage Control is I was reading this week, actually, that both ABC and NBC are developing shows along the same vein. ABC is actually developing a show titled Damage Control that is totally based off the comic series, and if you think about it, it's just a perfect superhero show for a network. I mean, you can sprinkle in some capes, have them destroy, some things, and then Damage Control comes in and clean them up. I mean, there's not a lot of special effects involved. It's not totally driven by the powers and the supers. It's the people cleaning up afterwards. So you have one huge scene and then you get the cleanup. I mean, obviously there'll be a lot of CGI, but nothing like shows like S.H.I.E.L.D. when they've got a bunch of different Inhumans and things doing stuff. This it's going to cost some money, but it's a superhero show that they don't have to spend probably huge amounts of money on. The other thing that I really dig about the idea of this show that ABC is doing is that it's a workplace comedy, which are always, can be entertaining, but they're sort of looking at doing it, and it's going to be done around sort of like The Office was, one camera, quasi-documentary type, which really suits the wacky nature of the comic book really well. So it should be a fun show, and I'm really looking forward to it. Now here's the description that ABC released. Damage Control centers on the overworked and underpaid cleanup crew of the Marvel Universe. Their specialty is dealing with the aftermath and unique fallout from superhero conflicts, like returning lost ray guns to their rightful owners, rescheduling a wedding venue after it has been vaporized in a battle, or even tracking down a missing prize African parrot that's been turned to stone or goo. That is parts confusing. I'm not sure what it means by that. Sometimes the most important heroes are the ones behind the scenes. So you can see this is totally out of the comic. It's ABC. They own the whole thing. They own Marvel. So it's, maybe we'll see some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in there. We'll see, I think actually I saw in doing research on this, I was watching some YouTube videos, and one of the Comic-Con announcements, I cannot remember the actor's name, but the guy who plays Coulson in, the Avengers movies or the Captain America movie and in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he's in the first episode of Damage Inc. or Damage Control. So that's how they're just going to lead us into the show. And another show now that I mentioned, ABC and NBC are working on shows. NBC is also doing a workplace comedy that revolves around superheroes and the damage they inflict on cities, but that show concentrates not so much, at least from what I've been able to read, on the cleanup, but on the insurance end. And NBC's show is called Powerless, and again, it revolves around normal people, non-powered people who help out cities and average Joes when supervillains destroy their property. Now, the interesting thing about this show is that it's actually set in the DC universe, making it the first DC superhero comedy out there. So this isn't just there won't be like Captain Victory or, Captain Colossus. I mean, you could see, Supergirl smash into something. I don't know what kind of properties they're going to use, but this is in the DC universe. So they'll be mentioning Superman and Batman, maybe, who knows? So it should be interesting. I mean, it's really strange that there are two shows out there sort of that have to do with the same type of thing, but I guess this happens all the time. You get a show like, ER, then how many other networks come out with their own hospital shows. So it happens all the time. But, with all of us out here who love comics and just get a kick out of this stuff, I think both of them really should be able to find a different enough audience to hopefully last. I mean, if they're no good, they won't. But, I mean, come on. I've said it before. We live in this amazing time of comic book and geek television. I mean, they're making shows about damage control. I mean, what property will be next, right? I mean, maybe it'll be the Rainbow Raider, right, from the last show. We don't know. They are using everything and anything. Again, I think Damage Control makes a great TV show just because, it deals with superheroes, but you don't have to have superhero television show budgets for something like that. So, again, I'm really excited about seeing these, and there's some more information on the shows over at the website. Now, Powers actually premieres this Thursday, February 2nd at 8:30 over on NBC, so that's a quick one. We can watch that one pretty soon. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait a bit for the Damage Control show because that is still in development. They haven't, that's not ready to release. So in that respect, Powerless has a sort of a head start on them, but that'll help pave the way. So we can watch Powerless next week, but we're going to have to wait a little bit for Damage Control. Well, I want to thank you for listening to this week's show. Again, if you want to see some of the photos and some of the videos I've posted, just head over to the site, heroesvillainsandsidekicks.com. Over on the episodes page, the post for this podcast, I've got some video trailers for Powerless. There's a bunch of images from all these comics I've been talking about. You can also listen to the show there. Of course, if you're listening to it now, you either are there or you've downloaded it from iTunes. Speaking of iTunes, remember, if you are over at iTunes or if you've got a second, leave us a review so we can move up the ranks and more people can learn about the show. And if you have any ideas about characters or villains or whoever that you want to hear about on the show, remember you can now go over to the show, and on the right hand side there's a little tab with a microphone on it. It says, who do you want to hear about on the show? Click on that and you can actually leave a voicemail. It's really an MP3, right, on a server. It's not coming to my phone or anything, but you will leave me a voicemail. I can listen to it, do the research, and then put the show that you want to hear out there. And again, if you want your message to be played on the show, you can leave your name, first names only, and a little message at the end of your message that you want it to be played on air. So unless you mention on the voicemail that, and I want this to be played on air, I won't be putting them on air. Now, I'd love to put them all on air because I think it'd be neat for other people to hear from you, the listeners, on who you want to hear about. So you can do that. You can go ahead and you can leave a message over there at any time. I might be sprinkling more of those buttons where you can leave a message throughout the site, but for right now, I'm going to leave that tab over there and see how it works. Well, I want to thank you again for listening to the show. We'll be back next week with more. Take care.